Okay, it is 12:01, so we will go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Advising International Students from Latin America Advisor Forum. I am glad to see so many of you in attendance today via Zoom. Just a few quick announcements before we get started with our session. First, I think everyone deserves to take a deep breath or give yourselves a pat on the back for all the advising that you're doing. I know it's still a busy time with advising students. I know that I've met with several students already today and have some more this afternoon. So thank you for all that you're doing to help our students get registered for the summer and fall semesters. Our advisor forum series for the spring semester. After this advisor forum, we do still have 2 remaining advisor forums that I encourage you to register for online. Of course, those forums will be offered via Zoom. On Monday, May 3rd, we are going to hear from Dr. Kelly Wood as the lead facilitator, as well as from other presenters on our new Title III grant and improving retention and student success, specifically for our first generation students, and how Missouri State's going to work collaboratively on that grant and to make sure that we're serving our first gen students well. And then our final advisor forum for the spring semester will be on Wednesday, May 5th, and that's going to be part 2 of our Speaking Up, Not Over series, using nonviolent communication to advocate for trans students. Many of you were in attendance for the first session where we were able to hear from members of the trans community, and I think that those were very powerful stories that we heard. And Matt Scott from the College of Education Advisement Center in the part 2 session will be going through implications for advising, how we can continue to support those students and make sure that they feel welcome and that we're creating safe places for them, not only in our advising centers and offices, but across the university community. And then if you do have ideas for advisor forum topics for the fall semester, please make sure to complete the online form. It was listed in Inside Missouri State this previous Tuesday. And again, we're always open to hearing your suggestions and bringing topics forward that you feel are important for your advising practices. As a reminder, please enter your name and your department in the chat feature if you haven't already done so to receive Master Advisor credit. And just as another reminder, this advisor forum will be recorded and will be posted on the Mo State Advising YouTube channel within a few days. So if you have colleagues that are unable to attend today, please let those individuals know that they can visit the YouTube channel and still receive Master Advisor credit for watching the recording. To receive Master Advisor credit, they would need to log into the advisor certification status on the Academic Advising and Transfer Center website and then enter a custom submission. And then I will be able to get in there and approve that viewing. So with that being said, again, welcome. Thank you in advance to our presenters, Dr. Kelly Hayes, Dr. Judith Martinez, and Juan Cabrera for being here today. And I will turn it over to them.
Thank you, Ross. Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. My name is Judith Martinez, and I am from Modern and Classical Languages. And we also, of course, have Dr. Kelly Hayes and Juan Cabrera with us. So this is what we're hoping to accomplish today. And of course, we want to make it interactive. So we want to share our knowledge and experiences and some of the research on this. But please type in the chat some questions. We'll have at the end, of course, question and comments and have a dialogue with you. So we're hoping to talk about the historical background of Latin American and the United States educational system. Also the Latin American context in prior of students coming here, some of the challenges international students face when they when they arrive here, and then something to give you to have some cultural responsive advising for them. One of the things that we were discussing, or that I would like to highlight, is that the three of us, Juan, Kelly, and I, have had the experience to be international students here. So we went through some of these challenges. We also experienced some of the things that really helped us stay here or succeed in academics. So we want to share that experience also, as well as the research. So I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Dr. Cabrera Hayes. So,
okay. Okay, so although this is not the main topic of this advising forum, because we're not planning to talk about the historical educational systems or any background, we thought that it was important to talk about the educational systems in the US and in Latin America, and mainly some comparison and contrast between the two, because knowing how those two systems developed will help us understand why students behave the same way. Why? Because the way the two different systems developed has an important way on how education is carried in the two different places and how students behave as well. So let's see here. So two important statements between the two educational systems that will determine how they work now. First is that each system has a different historical and institutional development, and we will talk a little more about later. And the second one is that each system reflects its national or regional context and its level of development. However, both systems have a common objective. They want to increase and deliver knowledge through a relationship between faculty and students. So we're gonna go back a few centuries ago to understand how things work now. By 1973, both educational systems in Latin America and in the US, they were both having issues. However, the issues were totally different. The universities in Latin America created a concept of a university government that was independent, student-centered, democratic, and valuable, but it suffered from a series of procedures, processes, and effective academic structures that are not very adequate, or were not very adequate, to the contemporary responsibilities of the universities at the time. On the other hand, the United States created effective academic processes and procedures adapted to the needs of teaching and research of the time, but they didn't have a clear understanding of their internal processes, the decision-making, and what their relationship with society was. That changed later, and we will discuss that soon. So let's talk about the roots, and to understand how both systems got where we are now, we want to look at roots of both educational systems. You may think that the US higher education developed first and faster than the Latin American higher education. However, it was the opposite. The oldest universities in the Western Hemisphere are Latin American universities. We have Santo Domingo University in the Dominican Republic that was founded in 1538. The Universidad de San Marcos in Peru. It was founded in 1551. The oldest college in the US is Harvard University, that was founded in 1636, so almost 100 years later. By 1775, Latin America had founded 18 universities, while in that same year, here in the US, there were only 9 universities. In comparison, both systems have their roots in the medieval university. The differences is that the Latin American universities adopted a more Paris style, and the US universities adopted a more Bologna style. And that will have a huge impact in how the classrooms work nowadays in the two different systems. The medieval university in Bologna was mainly controlled by students, and this model influenced the universities in Southern Europe, Spain, which has a big influence in how Latin American universities developed. And I lost my train of thought. Yeah, and in the medieval university in Paris, let me move on to the next one. Yeah, the medieval university in Paris was predominantly influenced predominantly the universities in the US or New England, the colonial universities, and they were controlled more by professors. The model influenced the universities in Northern Europe, England, Scotland, but both systems developed differently according to how the countries got independence in the 1800s, how their government styles worked, their funding they received from not only the government, but also private institutions, among some other factors. In the Latin American universities, the professors were seen as employees, while in the US educational system or universities, the professors directed students and had an important role to play on how the university was, the idea of the university that exists now in the United States. They have a lot of impact and they played an important role on how the university and what it is now. So this is a lot, but I'm gonna try to go quick on some of these topics. The universities in Latin America were autonomous in their organization. However, they followed the strict rules imposed by Spain. At the moment, the university served the needs of the Spanish ruling class and supplied a very small number of clerics, lawyers, and doctors that were needed at the time. The method of instruction was the formal lecture and the debates in a very medieval style, which it is still used in Latin American countries now. And the professors taught the same course for the entire lives. The number of graduates was very small. And after the country started becoming independent from Spain, universities transitioned to a more professional university with little focus on research. Those colonial universities were mainly located in the main cities, and the professional schools that started being created or being built were built in rural areas. On the other hand, the United States, the universities here had strong ties to various religious denominations of mainly Protestants, and were mainly governed by non-academic team of directors. The curriculum emphasized a body of literary historical materials, and the professional education was carried out outside of college under like apprenticeship systems, such as in the case of law or medicine school. The colleges were small, residential, often located on the outskirts of large urban cities or areas. The number of students who attended college was very small, which will change later in the late 19th century with the influence of the Industrial Revolution, the German universities and the influence, private philanthropy, land grants, the emphasis on industrial and agricultural technology here in the US, and a wide opening of educational opportunities, which allowed more students to go to college. In Latin America, the universities were national institutions. They, because they were aiming for professional education, the idea of general education was met in high school. So because of these reasons, universities thought, well, we don't need to build or duplicate labs or libraries, since the students already took and learned all those courses in high school. With the time, some independent colleges were created away from the cities, but were still very stratified, elitist. It was a very elitist education, mainly oriented to agriculture programs, and a lot of those kids were educated in Europe. In the United States, the universities were state institutions scattered throughout the country and not located in the main cities. And we see that now, still, the universities, the students traveled daily to their colleges, but the idea of the university was unified. Part of this influence is due to the general education concept. All disciplines, they take general education concept courses, which is different from the education in our Latin American countries, where the idea of the general education doesn't exist because we went for a professional education. In the last decades of the 19th century, the US university had a huge development in the classical age of American capitalism. So an open market, supply and demand, industrialization, almost all of the institutions that collectively define the character of the American higher education today developed during the last decades of the 19th century. Universities that were able to build labs, libraries, they all prospered and began offering graduate degrees. This made many more professors want to become part of this new idea of university, and thus the main professional and intellectual societies that exist today here in the US were formed. That was the idea of unity. Publications, annual meetings, conferences. There was a university community, the idea of a university community. This didn't happen in the Latin American university because of the nature of the professors. They were just adjunct faculty. They didn't have time to get involved in research or some other activities. So the difference become even bigger between the two, or became even bigger between the two. To look at the two systems, we want to look at some different objectives between the universities. You may ask, okay, why are we talking about all this history? Well, the objectives is going to help us understand how the classroom settings developed different as well, and how they are handled now, or how they work nowadays. In Latin America, the objective before World War II was to graduate professionals, mainly doctors, lawyers, civil engineers. So students didn't enroll in college. They enrolled in college as soon as they finished high school and started the professional education right away. This professional education required a very rigid curricula that we will discuss later. Judith will talk about it. Taught mainly by adjunct faculty with primary jobs somewhere else. They didn't have time or pay much attention to research. And as a consequence, continuing education was limited only to cultural or artistic activities, because faculty didn't have time to engage in anything rather than their courses they were teaching. There wasn't a concept of unity, as I mentioned before, or the concept of university. However, in the US, university focused on teaching, research, and service as well. continuing education. So general education, the German influence brought also graduate studies, and the development of research helped US universities a bunch. The university was seen as the place where society could develop as a whole in the US. That was totally different from what happened in Latin America. And to illustrate that, I want you guys to read the quotes that is on the screen right now, because that illustrates how the US university really has an impact in, or is seen as the place where society could develop as a whole. I don't know if someone wants to read that. Ross, if you can help us read that so we break a little my voice and accent.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Nowhere in the world is the university the cannibal it is in the United States. All other nations delegate some of the task of education, entertainment, and research to other institutions. Nowhere else it is automatically assumed that everything everyone wants when it comes to educational experiences beyond high school, or everything everyone wants to see done in terms of practical problems, data collection, universe research, or cleaning up the world landscape was, as a matter of course, a function of the university.
So as you can see, this is and cannibal here is not is used with a negative connotation. It's just to show how the university becomes such an important part of the development of the society. So what are the relationships between universities and society, and the differences between the two systems? In Latin America, the universities take part on the issues in society. They are informed, they have an opinion about it, they discuss it, argue it. Do we do something about it? Well, that is another discussion. In the US, there is a more neutral position. Faculty or students have different opinions, personal opinions or points of views, but the institution as a whole remains neutral towards the issues. They solve them in different ways, but there is no that involvement with it. Do you guys in the US do something about it? Yes, you do a lot. And this has a lot to do with the technical approach and the pragmatic approach. We, in our countries in Latin America, we use a more technical approach. So we talk about the issues. We have an objective that is probably far away from, it's too idealistic. So it's hard to accomplish. Here in the US, you have you may not have the objective defined in the beginning, but you start working, and at the end you have a product and you figured out your objective, what you are building your product. Also important to say is the student leadership that Latin American universities there is a strong student leadership in our Latin American countries that you don't see in the American educational system. So finally, we just want to talk a little about university governments. As I mentioned before, Latin America was influenced by the Southern medieval universities with a strong student body authority tradition. The universities wanted to maintain their autonomy, so professors elected their own authorities, and a lot of strong body organizations were founded. You may be able to remember the ones in Argentina, Chile, Mexico, which are still very, very strong. The US model was influenced by the Northern medieval universities, mainly England and the New England colonial colleges. And although they had the intention to be governed internally, there were some factors that didn't allow it. The professors were very immature at the time and seen as amateurs. So the only important person was the president, who was usually a cleric. Everything was governed by non-academic boards of clerics, and later some lack of resources allowed bankers and lawyers and businessmen to be part of the boards. So there is a big difference on how universities are governed, and this and some of the background history we have mentioned will help us to culturally understand our students a little better. We invite you to read Nixon's speech in Washington on April 29th in 1969, a few years after the Democratic Convention in Chicago, where you guys know what happened. During that speech, Nixon was very dismissive of student organizations and their power and involvement in universities and even society matters. He made specific comments about Latin America student organizations and how they have ruined education in Latin America, and even how the US government couldn't allow that to happen here in the US. So that's an important part of history that it's very interesting to read, at least it is for me. So to illustrate how student bodies and the student organizations are very important in Latin American universities, this is happening today in Colombia, which is Juan and my home country. So we have students marching in the entire country. There is a national strike that is mainly supported by universities, students, and professors, because the Colombian government wants to increase taxes for Colombian families. So I'm gonna stop here with all the educational background, the educational system. This by any means is a general or is set up in stone. There are variables, but we just wanna show you general ideas on how the two systems developed. And it will make more sense later when Judith and Juan explain a little more about the specifics of Latin American students and their cultures. Judith?
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. That was a nice disclaimer. We always want to make sure that we say that there are variables, that Latin America has its diversity within its diversity, and that it is very uneven. But we want to give you just a general perspective so we understand where our students are coming from. And you know, to continue with this, one other thing that I just want to say also is that a lot of the universities in Mexico, at least almost in every state in Latin America, they're called autonomous. So they just kind of rule itself, and that's very empowering. That's very empowering for faculty and also for students, because they just kind of have their own independence. So most of us are coming from autonomous universities over there. So, you know, again, when students are coming from a Latin American university or from the Latin American educational system, most of the times we're focusing, like Kelly was saying, on a lot of the, you know, the inheritance that we had from France or that we had from Spain. Most of the courses are taught in a very, what we call here, it's not student-centered many times. It's more like the student, I mean, the professor is lecturing. There's a lot of emphasis in lecturing, which is a little different here. When I came here, and of course, Kelly and Juan, when we did our masters here, there's a lot of focusing on student centering, on giving students the opportunity. And one other thing that is important is that it's perhaps not that the relationship with the faculty member is distant, but it is that it is based on respect. There's a lot of respect for faculty on the side of the student. You know, we always address them by the title. Yeah, if we don't know their titles, it'll always be professor. A lot of the time students will wait for you for the professor to call them to say the answer. So I think this is important to keep in mind when we have international students from Latin America, because they will try, or we will try to show a lot of respect, because the perception for authority, it's very ingrained in the culture. And the other thing that's important is that because like Kelly mentioned, in high school, there is already, most of the gen eds are embedded in the high school curricula. Then, when students are coming here, one of the biggest confusions that we have is the gen eds. We don't know where we're taking gen eds, and we also don't know that we have the choice to, fill in all the boxes, 3 credits from here, 3 from here, 1 plus lab, here, this or that. That's, we have a set curricula in Latin America. Once you choose to go to education, they will literally give you a sheet with, what's going to happen to your life in the next 4 years. And that never changes. And if it changes, it's for the next generation, but, it's predetermined. So when students are coming here, it's different. And it is important to understand that that's where we struggle the most, in choosing from all the boxes. So if they are, for example, first generation students plus first generation international students, they're going to struggle with choosing which courses to get. First of all, because that's not usual, that's not common in our countries. I think here, the concept also of office hours or student hours, like it's called, I think it's very appreciated by students, because, like Kelly was saying, a lot of the faculty in many places, and because of this relationship of respect, students won't just drop in to the office and ask questions. So it is important that there's some sort of rapport or reaching out on behalf of the advisor, so that they know that they are welcome to come to student hours or advising hours, or that they are welcome when they are coming. And another thing that is important is to keep in mind the differences among countries, among Latin America. One of the things that I have heard from students, and like I was saying, Juan, Kelly, and I, we both went through a program here as international students. And one of the things that we get from other international students is the assumption that everybody is from the same place, or that every country is like the same. And each country has different structures in the educational system. They might have 2 years of high school, 3 years, 4 years, it's different everywhere. In some of them it's K through 8 mandatory and free. In others it's K through 12 mandatory and free. So it is different. It is hard for me to remember all of this, but what it is important to keep in mind is that our students are from Latin America, from different places. They might have a different background. And especially one of the assumptions that we make is that, the one place that we know in Latin America, we know that everybody will have the same background. And we have to remember this, that no, it varies even within the same country, depending on the region. And so making sure we understand. One other thing that we wanted to mention is that in Latin America, pretty much when students come here, they come from public schools or from private schools. And we're focusing in this presentation on international students, which, has a lot of similarities with our domestic Latinx students, but it also has some differences. So, it is important that we understand mainly those 3 general ideas of where our students are coming from. We have rural schools that have multi-grades. Usually this will be a 1 through 5 classroom where all the kids are together, and they will have a high school student who has a scholarship to go to high school, who will go there and teach and then do high school online or over the weekends somewhere else, right? Usually these students are not the students that are coming here as international students. Most of them will be students that are coming from public schools or from private schools, right? A lot of the public schools will have already English, right? Some of them since kindergarten and then up to high school or middle school. But what it is important is that students will have an understanding or some understanding of the American culture since we are growing up. Even if we attend a public school, English and the American culture is always somewhat present and is always presented as something, as a culture that we are to admire. So when students are coming here, there's usually a lot of excitement about coming to America, and there's usually a lot of excitement about learning more English and wanting to know the culture and wanting to understand, right? They want to get to know what's available, right? And they have grown up knowing a little about the American culture, which is different from the rural places, right? But I think a lot of the times, especially when we came there, we encountered a lot of assumptions, as if we were not familiar with America, and that's kind of like a misconception. And a lot of students who attend private schools, which happen to be very expensive, and sometimes they're very, very expensive, I'm talking very expensive, will go to school completely in English. And so, when students come here and we try to, assume that their English is, or we tell them, you speak English very well, well, those kids probably only took one Spanish class their whole life while they were attending in Latin America because they attended an American school. So, it is important that we understand that, we have different systems, but when we are talking about international students, most of them will have come from public universities in private or public schools or private schools. So, like I was saying, one of the things, it's the general ed requirements. In Latin America, they're set in stone, the curriculum is set in stone, except if you go to a private school, that it might be the same as the American system. But this is where our students that are international will have a lot of questions, right? Which gen eds, and first of all, why? And then which ones? And then a lot of the times it might seem repetitive for them because they already took some of those in high school, right? And in high school, because of the background that Kelly was mentioning, most times when you finish high school, you have some sort of an associate degree because they're preparing you already for the world. So if you finish high school, you have something, so you can, especially if you go to a public university, high school, so that you can already go into the in the job market. A lot of high school kids will have some type of teaching scholarships, like I was talking about, so they can go into rural areas and teach the multi-grades, and then they can complete their high school. I talked about this, the set curriculums that we have. A lot of the times, professors here will, and I think we felt that ourselves, Kelly, Juan, and I, right? When you're a student here, you tend to be, and and even you tend to be a little quiet. The perception for authority is, it's very ingrained in our brains. It's since you're growing up, there's no, I remember, my mom and grandma and everybody, I mean, they're all teachers, but they'll all tell you, I'm going to believe whatever your teacher says, whatever your professor says, whatever you say, that's not what it is. So, there is a lot of respect. Yeah. And, when students come here, you might notice that they might be shy, but they are really showing a lot of respect towards who you and what you represent as an authority of knowledge and as an authority of a mentor, and as an authority of somebody who's going to guide them. What we were saying, English in public schools as well is mandatory, which, the reason that I mentioned this is because, and of course, my colleagues, Tanya and Jeff are here, and I'm going to make my ad for languages, but when you learn another language, you're learning the culture as well. So they have, already some prior knowledge about the American culture. And we sometimes assume that they come here with zero background. Another thing to keep in mind is that they might be first generation students going through the university, but then an extra layer would be first generation international students. So they don't really have, or somebody to ask except for you here that are going to be their advisors, because their parents probably, or there's somebody in their country, don't have an understanding of how the American system might be like, right? For instance, in Latin America, most people will live at home until they get married, so they don't go away from college. That's one thing. And then the other thing is that most of them will, schedules, and Kelly and Juan can correct me if, in public universities will be set schedules, like, morning schedule, evening schedule, night schedule. And here you have a class at 8, and then you might have Tuesday, Thursdays. And then, so parents don't understand that. I remember my mom said, well, if you're not taking a class, why are you taking one? Didn't you go to school in the morning? Why are you now going at night? Well, it's different here, Mom. So, the other, one other challenge is that because of the visa, as international students, there's limited access to work opportunities and limited access to traveling, which is an emotional stress. It's a long procedure. We all went through that. So when you can't really go home when you want to, it is difficult, right? And of course, you get to be bilingual and master 2 languages, but at the same time, you have that pressure of performing in a foreign language as if it was a native language. I think that's, yeah. And I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Juan.
Juan, I think we have 7 more minutes.
Okay, that's good. I'll try to be quick and concise.
Okay.
Thank you, Kelly. That was really, really good ground information to understand behaviors of international students from Latin America. And actually, some of the topics I'm gonna talk about, I do touch a lot with everything that you have said. So some cultural responsive advice and tips that are important to look at when you are a professor or an advisor of an international student from Latin America. So Judith was talking about respect. So this basically is about the respect to authority. So we were raised to see professors and advisors as an authority, as someone who we should just respect, and whatever they say, it was that's what goes. So whenever you interact with an international student from Latin America, then you should, it's a good idea to make them feel welcome and let them know that their opinion is important and they need to be heard, in that what they're saying, what you are saying as an advisor or as a professor is not necessarily what is the rule, but it's just a guidance or a suggestion, in that they have a voice in any type of advising that they're going through you as an advisor or as a professor. Also, when it comes to interaction with international students from Latin America, we are very attached to, we are not an individual culture, so we don't just come and do whatever we need to do and then we go and leave. We are very attached to what the group is doing and how the group is interacting, and relationship with other people are also important. So that's we might say that we are a collective, we have a collective kind of culture. That's important to also take into account whenever you interact with a Latin American student. Same with the physical contact in personal space. We tend to be very cuddly and close to people, even if we meet them for the first time. So with that, I'm not saying that you should go for the kiss the first time you meet an international student from Latin America, but if they sit close to you or you feel like there's some kind of closeness, and I understand that in the United States, the culture of personal space, it might be bigger than with an international student, but just be aware that they don't intend any malicious behavior or anything. It's just our culture. It's just we're close. We like to feel closeness to whoever we are interacting with. So maybe discussing that with the student will be good to make them feel comfortable with how spaces are managed within your office, or it doesn't take you by surprise if they sit close to you, or if they're near you more than you probably would be more comfortable with at certain times in situations. Physical appearance, this is something my sister and I talk about a lot, and it was a big surprise and a cultural shock when we moved to the States and started attending class in the United States, because in our institutions in Colombia, in probably in Mexico, Judith can chime in here, but you always see students like super well dressed and very respectful of the professor and in the classroom. And then when we came to the States, we see students like wearing shorts and flip-flops to the classroom, or crop tops, and it was a real shock to us that students would attend to class. Or in pajamas. So it was with blankets, things like that. So that was a huge, big difference for us. And so it might be expected from Latin American students to be like well presented to class. We have 3 minutes left, so I'm gonna go through these things. Expose students through campus resources, and that the next slide is gonna talk about that. Yes, so this is important. So I'm gonna jump into this slide real quickly. So something that's really essential is international programs is the main resource for international students. So anything that an international student is going through and you are unsure of how to deal with it, international programs is there to support you as an advisor, as a professor, as an employee of the university, as staff. Always international programs, there's going to be someone who is going to help you with any issue that you have with an international student, not only from Latin America, but from any country. But well, we're talking about Latinx students right now. So international programs is the resource, is the go-to. We have lots of resources for them. For example, we have the Welcoming a New International Student Orientation. This is when we talk to our international students about practices in the US. So we talk about plagiarism, we talk about laws in Missouri, laws in the United States, cultural differences, and university culture. So we kind of try to teach them how the culture is here, so they can, without losing their identity, without losing their culture, they can also adapt to the American culture. The English Language Institute, especially for students that don't have the level of English that is required for them to attend a classroom, an academic classroom at MSU. So the English Language Institute is a great resource for those kinds of students. We have a bunch of cultural events during the year. So if you check the master calendar, you might see some of those also. I'm going to connect tutoring and the Writing Center. We want to offer the opportunity for international students to be successful in the American classroom. And for that, I think it's important to, if they are having difficulties in class, again, contact international programs and the English Language Institute. If they haven't traveled with their essays or with oral presentations, then we can be a good source for tutoring sessions and for the students to just feel that they have support, not only culturally, but academically as well. International Friends, it's also a program that we have for students who like to be in host families. Of course, the Multicultural Center, I see that in the chat. That's another resource. International Kid Advocacy Team. This is a organization that we created in international programs to support students with everything that has to do with mental health support, bias prevention, community connection, and again, other resources for international students to have at their disposal. And we also have the Global Leaders and Mentors. And this is also a resource for students to get connected with the university community. And also, this is kind of like a Big Brother program. So we connect international students with either faculty, staffs, or current students at the university for them to get accustomed to the university, for them to get to know how the university works, and people in the community. And basically just the purpose is to make students feel welcome, valued, and engaged in all aspects of campus life. And we're going to open the floor for questions or comments that you may have.
We have a few questions in the chat. Ross, do you want us to address those after this meeting or here? How do you want us to handle that?
Yeah, I think it would be great. We still have 8 minutes until 1, so let's go ahead and start addressing some of the questions now.
Okay, let me see what I can see here. Is referral for the care team. Brad Buddinghausen is connected here. Can you tell us what who the best person is to contact for the care team?
Sure, I'll put it in chat. It would be either Patrick Parnell or Deja Smith. They're the co-chairs of that. I'll put their names and email addresses. That'd be the starting point, and we certainly appreciate any referral if you identify a student in need in whatever way we can help with.
Thank you. Brad also, he has a lot of experience with international students coming here, but he saw his firsthand in Chile how the student organizations are very strong, and how they have a very important influence on decision making, and even not only in the university but in the countries. So your insight.
Another resource, and we put it in the chat, is the Multicultural Student Center. And I think Jeff asked, that's in the annex, and it's going to be moved to the PSU soon. But Dr. Kim Martin is the leader there, and students tend to go, who are domestic, tend to go to the MRC, Multicultural Resource Center. When for their activities, they have the Latinx sorority, they have fraternities that for domestic students mainly. Yeah.
I don't see any other questions in the chat. But if you have any specific questions, Juan, Judith, and I can always help with that. But again, as we said, international programs, which Juan and I work directly with, can help with any issues you may have with an international student from Latin America or from any other country. I think the important thing here is just to understand, have a cultural awareness of where these students come from, and that may help you understand, well, why this is why the student behaves this way, or why is, or even you know, when they address you in a specific way or they approach you in a way, why sometimes you may feel violated maybe, but you know, hopefully this will help you understand, oh, okay, the student is not getting close to me with a bad intention. It's just because they are affectionate. They would like to get close. You know, all these different cultural things that are very different from the US and Latin America may help you also understand, you know, how they behave and maybe help you advise them in a better way. We left out a lot of things that we couldn't discuss here in 50 minutes, but we are always, again, a resource for any issues you may have. We're open to any more forums if you want to on some specific things as well. So again, we're always here to help.
Okay. Well, thank you all for presenting such valuable information today. I think it was really great to hear the brief historical background between the two education systems and then lead up to advising practices today and how we can best support our Latinx population. So
Yes, yeah. Some students may say, okay, I'm used to just lectures, you know, course lectures. My professor talks and I take notes, I go home and I read. I'm not used to doing things, and all the courses I'm taking they are practical labs and things. What is all this? So maybe knowing those differences also will help you. Maybe ask the students, what do you prefer? Do you prefer a more you know, theory oriented or practical? You know, sometimes again, this is just general, and it also is going to depend on the student's preferences, but it's good to get to know the student, you know, what the student is expecting, what the student wants to do, and then maybe advise them accordingly.
yeah, well, and as you can tell in the chat, several people have noted wonderful presentation, great presentation, and so I echo that. And again, thank you for presenting information on advising students from Latin America. Participants, thank you all for continuing to support the Advisor Forum series, and hopefully we will all be able to reconnect again next Monday and Wednesday for our final two Advisor Forums for the spring semester.